It's 5:32 here in Cape Canaveral, and the Culture and Leisure Services Board meeting will be called to order. First of all, do a roll call.
Brad Purvell,
Here.
James Stobie,
Here.
Mary Mosquera,
Here.
Joel Fair,
Here.
Jenny Scott,
Here.
and Betsy Ronk is present on the phone with Kathy being absent excused.
Okay. Okay, we'll start with public participation. If there's any member of the public who would like to address any items here, please come forward. We haven't received any cards, but if there's anyone, okay. It looks like there's no one from the public who's coming forward. So next we'll go to our administrative items. We'll look at the agenda, looking to hear if anyone has a move to recommend that we adopt the agenda.
I so move.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
There's a second.
Great. Okay. Do we have to do any? Okay.
Okay, Brad Purvell,
Yes.
James Stobie,
Yes.
Mary Mosquera,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
Yes.
and Betsy Ronk.
4.
Great. And now for the minutes from the March 27th regular meeting. Do I hear a recommendation to approve the minutes for the March 27th meeting?
Recommend to approve March 27th minutes of the meeting.
I second the motion.
Okay, Brad Purvell,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mosquera,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
and Betsy Ronk.
4.
Okay, and we have one other set of minutes from the April 24th workshop meeting. Do I hear a motion to recommend that we approve those minutes from April 24th?
I recommend that we approve those minutes from April 24th.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it. This is Betsy.
Okay.
Okay, Brad Purvell,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mosquera,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
and Betsy Ronk.
4.
Okay, next we have a presentation by our Capital Projects Director, Jim Carlisle, and Resilience Manager, Zach Eichholz, going over the history of the beach and paid parking dialogue in Cape Canaveral and any updated research related to programs implemented by neighboring communities.
I'd like to start with a little bit of an introduction before Tim and Zach get started.
Okay.
As it was explained, because obviously whoever's watching doesn't necessarily have the full packet in front of them or might not have the packet in front of them, but this has been an ongoing conversation since before I started at the city. I even remember I actually discovered the opportunity to start working in the city because I used to run on the beach every morning, and I remember the day that I showed up and there was a number painted on my spot, and I wondered what became of it, and then all of a sudden nothing happened. And then when I started at the city, I realized that this was an ongoing back and forth thing. And one thing that hasn't really happened, at least in recent memory, and it's very easy to get amnesia between different elected officials. So you have one council that goes over all of this stuff, gets to see the presentations, gets to hear the research, they make a decision, and then 4 years later you have a whole brand new group of people that never heard any of that other stuff before. So when the topic came up of looking at different revenue sources, and paid parking is the biggest sore thumb sticking out of that. I thought it was incredibly valuable to give Tim the opportunity that he hasn't had before, and that is to present the history of this dialogue, how long this has been going on for, and what we currently know and what we could feasibly consider. You guys don't have to make any decisions on this. You guys don't have to take any actions whatsoever, but I think that it's worth getting this information on the record, public-facing, so you guys know what's been going on behind the scenes and why we possibly don't actually already have parking like every other city in Brevard.
Can I just get a time frame on the information? I understood that this had not been brought up since the multi-purpose building, since the community center had been built. Is that right? All of what he will present came before the
Most of
C5
it.
building?
Most of it, yes.
Okay.
Did you grab that one list that Todd had you create? With the timeline? Okay, yeah. So this goes way back before I even started with the city, and that was 11 years ago. So, yeah, it's been going on for a while.
But it precedes the C5 building?
Yes.
For sure?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, take it away, Tim.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you, Tim.
I will go over this as we go. I won't go into great detail on everything that I have here, but these are for your records, just to see what we've been through. Seems like I did.
Thank you, Tim.
It looks like there's a long history.
This is making me feel old because I was here then.
I think it's on now.
There we go.
There
All
it
right,
is.
we're good. We're on. All right, back in it says it on here. Back in 2022, Todd had brought to my attention that we're going to do paid parking, but it collapsed. And I wrote up a memo. I believe it went out to the council and the mayor at the time, explaining the whole history of what happened and why it happened. As you can read, 2011, there were some people that wanted it and some people that didn't. Some person that, Rocky Randalls, of course, wasn't there. And then back in July of 19th of 2011, Mayor Rocky was there and was against it. Pro Tem was against it, and Jim Morgan, Buzz Bastos, and Betty Walsh were for it. So once that vote came in, they went ahead, and the city manager at the time, which was David Green, pulled the trigger on buying all this equipment without a final thumbs up, which was a grave mistake. As time went on, we went to the next meeting on November the 15th, 2011, and we got a 3-2-4. And then I believe Jim Morgan at the time had passed away from a heart attack, and John Bond took his place. John Bond was 100% on board at the time. He wanted to see paid parking implemented throughout the city. Well, at the last meeting they had on December the 20th, 2011, it flipped. It was 3-2 against and 2-4. So as I stated in this real short memo, we sold back $193,000 worth of equipment for $88,000. So that's very unfortunate for taxpayers. I wasn't here at the time. Things were done backwards. I'm not sure exactly, and I'm not speaking for anybody when I say I don't know what they were thinking. But fast forwarding it up to about 3 years ago, it was brought up as a possibility to re-implement paid parking throughout the city. So me and Zach started looking into different cities what they were doing. We wanted to know how they went about opening up their pay system. We wanted to find out what was incorporated into it, their revenues, everything that you can think of. And that's what the presentation pretty much is going. My main thing on this is I need to sell, I actually sold 4 of the council members that were up here during when I was trying to implement it. And not, at the time I was told, hold back, there's an election. Hold back, there's an election. Hold back, you know how that is.
I'm sorry, implement what?
The paid parking system back
Okay.
up again. And that's what I'm gonna speak on. But as it sits now, I have all the information. Me and Zach both can roll it out. It just needs to be agreed on by council and the mayor and everybody else. So, real quick, I'm gonna go through the slideshow. I'm gonna go kind of fast, but for you guys to able to understand it, so that leaves you time to ask questions if needed. All right, so there's a lot of pros and cons on paid parking. As you can see, there's only one real con that I came up with in my investigation, and that was drivers might try and park on private property or at city-owned facilities to get away from having to pay. As you can see, pros, beach patrol for dogs and nuisances, cleaner beach ends, tax relief for residents, revenue to maintain beaches and beach end parking, low maintenance and sustainable solutions with newly innovative ways to pay, provide funding for community assets, reduces congestion, and paid parking has become more convenient. With that being said, the additional positive points that I want to talk about is the financially friendly. There's no excessive bulky machinery to buy. Now let me go into a little small detail on this. What other cities are doing, in fact, I'm going to fast forward here. That's my car on the left-hand side next to that sign. I went over to Fort Myers. Me and my wife love to go looking for shells on the beach. Unfortunately, West Coast has better shells than the East Coast, so we go over to the West Coast to go shell looking. While I was there, I noticed in Fort Myers they have these signs all over the place. And I said, oh, look, it's exactly what me and Zach have been looking into. So as I sat there and read the sign, I pulled out my phone, scanned the QR code, typed in my information, and I was out on the beach in like less than 5 minutes. I had paid and everything. So that's just an example of how bulky meters aren't needed to be used.
May I interject something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah.
I do know in the Fort Myers area that they changed these signs recently because if you do not have a smartphone, there has to be an alternative way to pay. Secondly, QR codes are one of the most used items to put a virus or find out your information. It's very easy for someone to put a sticker over that QR code. So I would be very wary about that. But please continue your...
So if you look at the right-hand picture, it has no QR code. There's many different companies out there that do it all differently. We will pick probably the safest company that we can go with. If we have a parking enforcement, they will go out and make sure that there's not a sticker over the original QR code because that's how they get you. They actually print out their stickers, put it over the other QR code,
Yeah.
go out there and scan it, and then they get duped. But there are plenty of them that have phone numbers that you can pay by, text by paying. I know your smartphone thing. I asked Fort Myers, I said, how many people have had issues that haven't had smartphones call you and say they can't do this? And he said, one guy. Out of everybody, it was one person. I said, well, what did you do in that case? He said, well, he just called us and said, I can't pay to park. And we did it over the phone right then and there.
Okay, as long as we have a phone number.
Yes, yeah. So ours will have a phone number. And once I get to the end of the presentation, I've got all kinds of companies and all kinds of different signs that you can see how many different ways they do it. So again, financially friendly. We found companies that will actually come out here free of charge, put up their signs. We maintain the signs, I believe. They supply everything, and in return, what it is they get a percentage of the hourly fee that we charge. So let's say it's, we'll do a dollar, and they want 50% of that, let's just say. So we would jack it up. We would say $1.50. They get their 50, we get our dollar. That's how the fees would work. And we would adjust it as needed, whatever the city would see that we would get good revenue out of. Of course, we're not going to totally go out of the ballpark and say, I think Cocoa Beach is $5 an hour. They're the highest ones in Brevard County. The cost of manpower to install signs, like I just mentioned, some companies will come out and do it for free. There's virtually no maintenance, just a matter of keeping the signs clean. Multiple ways to pay. We just kind of spoke on that. QR code, text to pay, online website, phone number. Some companies have that. COVID friendly. At the time, we were really looking at COVID. You're not touching machines. You're not touching money. It's touch free. Then, of course, reduced operating cost continues with labor, equipment. Again, no bulky equipment to replace from wear and tear and elements. No faulty equipment to lose revenue. No coins collection needed. There's bonus features. While I was out in Fort Myers, my phone would ring and say, hey, you got 15 minutes left. Do you want to add more money? And I could just add it from my phone and keep walking. You know, I didn't have to rush all the way back to my car to put more dollars in or to slide my credit card again. You could do it from wherever you are as long as you have your phone on you. And pay for extra time wherever you are. Positive revenue, we kind of touched that in the beginning. Infrastructure, city roads, crossovers, sidewalks, etc. Beach and beautification projects, landscaping projects, and park maintenance. Again, there's a couple signs that I've come across as I was over on the West Coast. This is Air Garage's terms and services. I just thought it was a good slide to put in there. It kind of shows you, we won't necessarily do 24/7, 365 operations, but it shows you, you know, Air Garage is one of those wireless pay systems that you don't have to feed a bulky machine or do anything with that. It's all contactless. As you can see, there's no gates, no pay stations, no operators. That's just one example of another one called Air Garage. And this is an up-to-date fee schedule that each city throughout Brevard County pays right now, or charges right now at their beach ends. This has literally just been updated 2 days ago. So Cocoa, you can see there's a resident annual fee on some of these cities. There's a resident semi-annual fee on some of these cities, a non-residential annual fee, a non-resident semi-annual fee. And you have your hourly rate, of course, and your full date rate. One thing I do want to mention is when me, Zach, and Todd and others were discussing this, we kind of bounced around the idea of, well, how are residents going to pay? What are they going to pay? Are they going to pay? We were thinking about putting a bucket in ad valorem, but we decided against it. We were like, no. And I finally said, look, residents already pay taxes. We're more concerned about people coming over from Orlando, coming to these cruise terminals, coming to the hotels, come and use our beaches, trash our beaches, then leave and not have to worry about anything. Residents care about their beaches. They care about the beach ends. They care about garbage. So it would be only for these out-of-towners coming in, temporary, these Airbnbs, people like that, they would have to, you know, that's where the hourly rate would go and stuff like that. So residents would just need to come to City Hall and get a sticker and register their plate. It would be something of that nature, real simple. That's what I'm leaning towards. That's what I'm hoping for. I think that's only fair. I mean, if I lived in the city of Cape Canaveral, I wouldn't want to pay to go to my own beach.
Tim, can I ask you a
Yeah, sure,
question
go ahead.
about a residency requirement? Did you guys think about like what determines a status for residency? Is it property ownership? Is it driver's license address? What is it? If you decided or talked about it?
That's been bounced around as well. Some people just require a bill. If they bring up a FPL bill or a water bill and say, hey, here's my residence, that shows us proof of residence. It could be a driver's license, because normally you have to get your driver's license changed, I think, within 30 days of moving.
You should, but
You should, yeah. Hey, I'm guilty. Back in the day, I never did mine, but.
And we
yes.
do have residency restrictions in other areas of, especially our department, and we require documentation to prove residency. So it's a lease, you have to provide an ID, the name on the ID has to match the lease or the bill or the tax bill. So that's the same, I would recommend the same as what we use in our other facilities to determine residency.
And recently, it's also been brought up to my attention, well, what about the people that are coming and staying a couple weeks at an Airbnb or something like that? They would have to pay the hourly rate, because they're not full-time residents. And I think the reason why the other cities did a residential semi-annual fee and possibly a non-residential semi-annual fee, I'm not sure why they did the semi. Some people thought it was because they were northerners that come down only part-time. So, and then this page shows you revenue. We didn't get a full entire scope of everybody's revenue up to date, but it does kind of show you where each one's at. Of course, Cocoa Beach blows everybody out of the park because they have the parking garage. They have
And the
numerous
meters.
places. Yes, they had numerous places of parking. You can see the fines in there, the fees, the parking structures. City of Melbourne Beach, we have 2021. They're unique, and I'll show you guys why in a minute on a map. But they do not charge their residents for any beach and parking except for one place. It's weird. It's different. When I was searching into it, I'm like, they're allowed to go anywhere they want, but this one place, everybody gets charged the same amount, no matter if you're a resident or a non-resident. So, City of Satellite Beach just rolled their program out for 2024-25. They're fairly new to it. They're the cheapest, I believe, on hourly rates, which is only $2.50. But again, they're kind of fresh out of the gate, so everything's been new on their end. And we've also learned a few things of how not to roll things out because of them. So they made some mistakes, so I heard, so we're not going to make the same mistakes. And here's the end of it. As you can see, I put a lot of different logos at the bottom. That's a lot of different companies. Park Mobile, Passport Parking, Pay by Phone, Easy Park, Tez Park, Haunt, Text to Park. There's numerous companies out there we've confided in. And as you see, each one of those signs, besides my nice looking Ghostbusters parking only sign, there's no QR codes on all of them except for one. There's different ways to pay. There's phone numbers on some of them. There's QR codes on some. There's going onto an internet site and just typing your information on. So that's pretty much it. I do want to show you, however, the map that I've made.
hey, Tim,
Yes.
can I ask you a question about
Sure.
the payment cycle? Like, when you use the electronic payment to the company that you choose, do you know whether or not the city of Cape Canaveral would get the funds first and then pay the percentage, or is it the opposite way?
That's a good question. I don't know
Okay.
the answer to that.
Okay.
I do know that there is on most of these companies, they do have a back door. So what the back door does is they do all the collection, and I believe it goes to them. They send us a printout of all the revenues, and then probably send a check. Unless it's a direct deposit thing. I haven't really searched that far yet because we haven't gotten anywhere near a possible approval yet.
Yeah.
But the more we get in depth with it, like you're speaking, I would definitely,
Yeah, and what the delay time would be between the time the money is collected and when it's dispersed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get all that information.
This is Betsy on the phone. Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have three things. I'll just put them all out there at once so then you can address them. One is you did speak about enforcement, And I was just wondering what the cost of enforcement you have found that other communities are experiencing, and how that would relate to the type of how much enforcement we would need in our smaller location. And then secondly, had you looked at using the same app? They use it as an app as Cocoa Beach uses, just to make it more accessibly easy for people who travel around the area. And then third, did you do any type of an estimated revenue based upon a few different price points that would be what could be collected in Cape Canaveral?
All right, so the first question, stated again?
Enforcement,
okay.
cost of enforcement?
So we looked into buying a UTV or a motorized vehicle, possibly like a golf cart. It would be two part-time people. But the bonus on this that we would incorporate within just going out there and watching cars, making sure they pay, is that they'll be able to also do beach enforcement. So it's not just, they won't just be out there, doing their work with the meters, or they're not meters, I'm sorry, doing their work with writing tickets and stuff. They'll also be out on the beach, making sure dogs are off the beach, making sure that people aren't doing what they're not supposed to be doing. BCSO has enough problems of their own that, they've got crime all over the place. And it seems like lately I've heard a lot of issues with the council and at these council meetings about dogs on the beach. So this would help also really BCSO with keeping the dogs off the beach. So that's the enforcement we're looking at. We do have, on I believe this printout, we do have a estimate on how much revenue generated from virtual paid parking. And it's a very, very, very rough estimate. We haven't looked into it deeply, but we're thinking anywhere from 250 to 500,000. And I know that was your third question. Can you round about with your second question?
Have you looked into using the same app that is used in Cocoa Beach? They use an app on your phone. I think it's called Passport or something like that. I have it on my phone. I'm not sure which one. Most cities do use an app.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked into what Cocoa Beach uses. I do know that every city throughout Brevard County uses something different. They're not interchangeable. I do know that, but it wouldn't hurt to investigate, sure.
I was just thinking of making it easier on people sometimes they don't even know which community they're in as they go down and here's an empty space, and they just pull in. And the app could determine which city is getting paid and all of that kind of stuff, so they wouldn't have to worry about I just changed locales and I have to do something different.
Sure. No, those are good questions.
So Tim, 2 part-time staff. Are you planning to do that 7 days a week? From 9 to 5? I mean, just like...
We don't know yet. Zach, do you remember... I know this has been a discussion that never really got to the end of.
I think it was okay. Right. Right.
So two part-timers, 7 days a week, just for the record. And I believe that we weren't going to do overnight. It's just from certain time in the morning till a certain time in the evening.
Okay. Yeah.
So just running back of the napkin numbers, when you say 250 to 500,000, is that gross or net? Gross or net? Okay. If you run 2 part-timers, we're really looking at 60 hours a week. at about $10 an hour or whatever that magic number is. That's $840. Again, this is just back of napkin. $840 times 50 weeks, that's $42,000, and it could be higher than that. I'm okay, plus $10,000 for your ATV, plus whatever fines they write for other people. Okay, I think we need more data on that. And obviously, you're 100% correct. You cannot go by Cocoa Beach because they have that 4-story parking garage. Something else on that form, they mentioned dynamic fees. Is the city of Cape Canaveral going to have dynamic fees? It was on the presentation.
Yeah, it's still, and a lot of this is still in the think tank mode.
Oh, I'm just,
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
absolutely.
you know,
absolutely.
I'm not expecting answers. It's
Yeah.
things that we need to know.
It wasn't supposed to
Second,
be a feasibility study, I don't
Yeah.
think, tonight.
Yeah, this was originally supposed to be a city council meeting item.
Right.
But it was supposed to go deeper than this. And every time we got told to stop, we would stop. So the amount of time that we put into what you're looking for never happened. We
Okay.
never got that far.
Other question. Will there be residential spots only at each beach access street?
No, because that just the handicap will be free, but the residential spots will not be of something because then you just lose all your revenue. You lose the whole concept of paid parking because
No, you have 3 spots on a street or 2 spots on a street.
we could look into it. I mean, we weren't.
Other
we weren't-
cities have that.
do they?
Yeah.
Which cities?
I was told on the West Coast because I saw this
not here,
part.
though, in Brevard
No,
County.
not in Brevard County. What about when you went to the other cities in Brevard County? How much overflow parking is there going on the other side of A1A?
I never physically went to these places. We called.
Okay, I mean,
The
that's
only place
something,
I-
that's something we need to look at because I live at the corner of Magnolia and Jackson. That's on the east side of the C5 building,
Correct. I know where it's at.
okay?
I know where you live.
Those parking spaces fill up all around there on the weekends. So I don't want to see, in all honesty, I don't want those places to be charged either, to look at the revenue,
Right.
okay? But so you know, we need to see how much overflow there will be.
Right.
And other cities should have that data, I would imagine.
So you're talking like overflow as in
Overflow that I'm going to be at the beach for 6 hours and I don't want to pay $30.
Right.
So I'm going to park at the C5.
so kind of like the cons that I mentioned in the front where people are using private property to park
Or public
city-owned
yes,
property to
exactly.
park and then walk a block. That is a con.
Yep.
That is one of the cons that we did think of.
Unless you'll let me use my golf cart to haul their schmutz from their car to the beach. Okay. Yeah, I guess the dynamic fee, you answered the question about who will regulate it. Residential passes, yes. And I do have a comment. 2 comments.
And by the way, just for the record, it doesn't mean that we can't dedicate resident spots.
I understand.
At the time, we weren't thinking that. We were thinking, okay. In fact, at one point in time, Todd said, can we renumber every single spot to add another couple spots so that we could get more revenue? Well, in that case, we were never even thinking, hey, let's hold a couple residential spots. So it's an option.
We're just throwing stuff out on the
Yeah,
board.
absolutely.
2, 3 other things. 1, no matter what we do, there's always going to be a lot of trash at the end of our beaches. If we go with this program, then we have funds that the Waste Pro can put a Dipsy dumpster at the end of the beaches and they can pick it up. I think that's most important because Sunday afternoon, every beach end, the trash is overflowing with broken umbrellas, broken pop-up tents, beer, diapers, etc.
I have to find out why they ever got rid of the dumpsters to begin with, because I believe back in the day they had dumpsters at each beach end for that reason. But for some reason,
Since 1987, there's never been a dumpster.
no?
No. I lived on Jackson Avenue since 87.
Maybe I'm thinking of another city.
Okay.
I thought they always had dumpsters.
No. One last thing. Two last things.
You said one.
I know. Before we move, in my opinion, before we move on this project, there's a lot of other loose ends in our city that we need to look at. Granted, I have no idea what the cost will be to install those signs or whatever that is, okay? It's free, okay? But we have a lot of loose ends. In addition, there's no specific bucket where these funds are go. What you wrote up there is city streets, park and rec, landscaping. I believe it's for the beach. That should be cleanliness on the beach, and for park and rec, because that is recreation. Let the city figure out another way to get funds to fix their streets. That's my take.
Okay.
Oh, the last thing. Charging for parking. Yes, it's a revenue stream, but that's the easy way to create new revenue. It's just like a supermarket. The easy way to create new revenue is raise prices. Thank you.
I do want to reiterate the idea that paid parking would push parking to other places, and then now you're saying, well, now we need to have paid parking outside the C5. Now we need to, and it just becomes like Mr. Purvell said, it becomes a sliding scale and a slippery slope. So I see the benefit, but and I think it would cost more upfront than what you're initially thinking. So I would rethink the manpower and how much you would have to pay the manpower, because you're going to ask them to do extra things like enforce dogs. Man, they better be trained well. They better know how to deal with people. It's not just your normal.
Most likely be code enforcement or a retired cop.
Okay.
Which knows what they're doing.
Which aren't going to work
Most-
for $10 an hour, right?
It won't be 10. It'll be more than that.
Right, but
Nobody gets hired at 10 anymore.
nobody.
Not even McDonald's workers.
That's right. So.
And I can add something for that. It's also an opportunity for us, which we could actually do at any time, to start limiting the hours that people can park at the C5 and some of our other city facilities, which would generate revenue, because if you're there for more than 2 hours, then clearly you're not still working out. So that could be another option for deterring that. Parking tickets will cost more than whatever it was you would have paid to go sit on the beach for a couple hours, and especially if we tow you.
I just want to remind you guys, though, that we are almost pretty much, besides the county, we are the last city that's not charging for parking. So the first place everybody wants to go is Cape Canaveral. So we get
We are a magnet.
everything. We get everything here.
I would also run that by the local businesses here and just get their input, because you're right. We draw people to the beach that might be using the local businesses, and so they might want to have some input. They don't get a vote, but you can take their input. They can have a voice.
Oh,
You know what I'm
sure,
saying?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that might be worth it too.
Business and Economic Development Board. Yeah, you get to reuse your presentation twice.
Can we get a copy of your PowerPoint?
Yeah, I can send that out, sure.
Great.
Absolutely. So you guys did bring up a lot of things. I appreciate it. Like I said, this is still a moving puzzle, since we weren't able to get that far into it yet. We aren't going to be frivolous though and go out and buy a bunch of machinery just for everybody to say no. So we even have an ordinance that's been changed that's close to what we're looking for if we ever implemented this. So they did all the work back in the day. They just didn't have the technology that we have today for paid parking. So it ends up being cheaper on our end. Yeah, it's still going to cost us when it comes to employees, golf cart. Now, the golf cart's just a one-time fee, so you can't include that in revenue or into the expenditure every year.
Well, you have to write it off, depreciation, I guess, right?
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
do,
know.
but I mean, it's not going to be that much. You pay $12,000, $15,000 for a golf cart. It's going to last at least 5 to 6 years at the most. So I would say, divide it up through 5 years, and then what I'm saying, crunching numbers. So, for capital projects, I do a lot of crunching numbers, so I got to make the best of y'all's money. Is there any other questions?
Well, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Very useful discussion.
Yeah, for me too, believe it or not, because you guys brought, like I said, some valuable points up. So if we decide to go further with this, we'll get further information that you guys are really digging into and be able to answer those questions.
All right, is there any other discussion on the presentation that Tim gave?
No, thank you.
And is there anything that the board would like to recommend after getting this information that we would like them to take into consideration? Is that something that you're looking from the board to bring some recommendations or just information?
It's purely informational item. If there's some additional research, if you want council to formally consider this, that can be a recommendation of this board, but you're not required to take any action at this time.
So does that mean we could make a recommendation to the city council to say that we have heard Tim's presentation and we recommend that they continue to move forward with looking at this in further study, since it sounds like it's always the council who stops the study midstream?
Absolutely.
So, Betsy, was there something that you wanted to put forth
Motion.
as a recommendation?
Well, I guess I would like to then propose a recommendation to the city council to have the capital projects director continue on with their research of paid parking and present it to the city council upon completion for consideration.
I'd second that.
Okay.
Brad Pravell,
Against.
James Stobie,
I need an explanation of what you're asking on that.
Just want them to further consider it.
I think I have a clarifying question. Aren't they currently considering, Capital Projects is currently working on this, correct? I apologize for.
No, that's okay. That's why I stayed behind, just in case there are any other questions. Capital projects and Community Economic Resiliency Division was working on this.
Okay.
Now you got to figure that was 2022, so that was
Okay.
that was 3 years ago.
So you have no direction from the city manager to be working on this project. So that's one of the things that we're looking for here is some impetus to keep the ball moving. Okay.
Yes.
Understand. All right. Thank you. That's
It's
helpful.
more or less to continue the studying and keep adding more information and data so
Yes.
that at some point, someday,
You got to think we kind of got Duke twice saying okay let's go, and then all of a sudden no, and then okay let's go. Well, actually it's the third time. I wasn't here for the first though. Okay. So when we kept on digging and then we were told to stop, we were digging and we were told to stop. We don't have the amount of information that is crucial that you guys are looking for, which is very crucial information. So you're right. This is kind of keeping the ball rolling, saying, okay, are we going to possibly be implementing this? Are we going to be wanting to do this?
right, so that's
Yes.
basically what we're recommending to have it, to see whether the council would be interested in to continue to study it, so at some point down the road.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, let me add this. At the last,
The way I look at it, the reason I proposed this was actually more so that the council knew that we heard Tim's research to this point in time and heard about the timeline and how it's been stopped always before completion of anything to even make a decision upon. And since this stream of revenue could be useful in the beaches, in the, CLS, whatever, I think it should at least be allowed to be completed and presented to the city council. What they do with it is always going to be up to them, obviously. But I think this always starting and stopping is not helping anybody make any kind of good decisions.
Ms. Secretary, would you read the proposal as you copied it
Yes.
so that maybe we could hear it one more time?
Betsy Ronk made a recommendation to continue research with paid parking and present it to city council.
I would just like it to make sure that it's stated in there that we have heard the proposal or we've heard from Tim of the research that has been done up to this point. And we propose that the research continue to completion so that it can be fully presented to the city council for vote.
Okay, so what I put is Betsy Ronk made a recommendation to continue research with paid parking and present to city council due to Tim Carlisle's presentation to complete research and come to a conclusion. And then we can tweak it.
This is what I've gotten so far. So the motion was made to recommend that the Capital Projects Director continue research into paid parking for eventual presentation for City Council's consideration on the matter. That's what I got, based on the history that was presented to this board.
Ms. Ronk, are you good with that?
Sounds good to me.
Can you maintain the second on the motion?
Yeah,
Okay. Why don't we call for the
All
vote
right.
again?
I understand.
James Stobie,
4.
okay. Mary Mascara,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
and Betsy Ronk.
Or
Moving on. We have a discussion item. At the April 24th workshop meeting, staff was asked to provide a snapshot of facility check-in data comparing a peak month to off-peak month to illustrate the difference in seasonal usage patterns and revenues to help better inform our discussion. So we're going to hear some discussion on reviewing the insurance provider data and discuss some recommended potential adjustments for future fiscal years. And Molly, do you have a discussion of that?
There was considerable discussion back and forth on who's been using what and how that changes based on what demographics are in town, whether it's August when it's mostly residents and the non-residents that are in town versus when we get our influx of seasonal residents. So I was able to work with Dana, who's one of our recreation leaders, and she's the one that has been like the champion behind helping people utilize their insurance stuff and whatnot. So we were able to get the data that's presented here, August and February, which are kind of like tend to be some of our slower months in certain areas and busier months in other areas. So you have your total check-ins for those respective fitness programs, the amount of money that the city received for those particular check-ins, and how much of those insurance users comprise, like what percentage of actual users were utilizing these. So one of the things to consider when you're looking at these numbers is everything still has a ton of variables. You might be that person that religiously comes to the C5 every day, and we're still only getting a maximum out of pocket, if you will, from that provider based on whatever they do, their maximum. Or they could be the person that only goes once a week, and so we're only getting $2.50 a visit, $3 a visit, depending upon what the program is offering. So each one of the programs does have a cap. So when I sat down and was, basically dividing 353 with the total payment, they don't equivalate, if that's the appropriate word, because there's so many variables on how people use the facility, what the caps are for the different companies. And I can say, I believe the February one does reflect the updated agreement for at least Silver Sneakers, if not one of the other ones. So that's why that number jumped a little bit.
Well, I think if we look at this data, which is very useful in conjunction with what we spoke about at the workshop, which is under the number 7 action items, it really makes it, I think, most easy on staffing and everything, and the people themselves, to leave the insurance programs alone as they are today, but just consider what we spoke of at the workshop of excluding the court from the basic membership, being that is an amenity that's not necessarily required by the insurance company, and then creating more of a court fee for those who choose to use the court. I think the best solution is probably and easiest for everyone. It would be to do something like that, and maybe just use the fee schedule of Nancy Hansen and just change that fee schedule to say that it's a court fee schedule, and it can be used at either facility for the court. And then it would just be a matter of telling the insurance people, your insurance no longer covers a court fee. It just covers, your basic membership covers the upstairs, which is the cardio, which is required by the insurance. It's a matter, though, of Molly being able to manage the staff, sounding like you had some ideas that could be managed as to, you know, who goes where and whether they've appropriately checked in for one of those items. I'm trying to decrease the amount of rec desk changes needed.
Thank you.
I agree with everything she said, except the court fees should not be the same, or pickleball court fees should not be the same. The reason being, the C5 is air conditioned. We should be able to get a dynamic fee for those courts as opposed to playing in 80-degree temperature outside. If you pay,
Well, except in the winter, you kind of think, or on the non-80 degree days, you know, you're still going to. I ran the numbers on that, and if you just looked at saying that for August and February, so you've got kind of a half and half thing going on there as far as weather goes. Even if you were to say, okay, all of these insurance people who checked in, and the average that they had to pay for a court fee was $3. So let's say it's midway between a resident senior rate and a non-resident senior rate, which is the cheapest rates for court. Okay, so we're going pretty cheap here. Over a year of 4 busy months and 8 slower months, that would be an increase of revenue of over $50,000 just by changing this court fee and leaving it as the court fees that there are. So I think that's, you know, if you look at it from that perspective, I think that's significant. And I don't see that the insurance people are necessarily going to balk at that, because like Silver Sneakers, they don't even pay anything for their insurance. I mean, we're getting paid for the insurance from the insurance, but they are not paying anything out of pocket. So if you tell them, okay, you have to pay this court fee, you can buy a monthly or a daily or whatever. I don't see them as complaining, because everywhere they go, they have to pay. And so they're looking at it as, oh, I'm not going to complain about this. This isn't such a bad deal. And we don't have to make a big rec desk change for staff to try to figure out where they're playing, when, what, whatever. People flip back and forth. We can always address that at some other point in time, but I think initially just make it as simple as we can and just try to see what the biggest obstacles might be, which could be how staff manages this or not.
If you limit the insurance to only upstairs, then one potential thing that I see is that we increase pickleball times in the C5 because they gain revenue where some of the other things wouldn't. And that would be one of my only concerns there, is if you have a particular revenue to pickleball, but then you don't have that revenue to other things, which I think you can handle. And I think that you can say, hey, this includes everything but pickleball. If you just say it goes upstairs and then somebody comes down and plays basketball, and then somebody finds out that they're playing basketball on their insurance, but I can't play pickleball on my insurance, then people they're going to find reasons to complain. We don't need to give them any more. But just trying to think through some of those possibilities.
And some of those are actually presented in detail in number 7.
Perfect.
Because
I didn't read ahead yet.
A court's a court is a court. We actually, for a little while, believe it or not, there was minor outrage because we had a local business owner. His family was from, I believe, Portugal. And they had a fun thing where they used a tennis court and a soccer ball. So,
As a soccer court, is that what you said?
no, the whole point was to get the soccer ball over the net, like tennis,
Oh,
only
okay.
using your feet. So a court is a court is a court. So regardless of what you're using the court for, whether it's basketball, volleyball, et cetera, and that's what I brought up for item 7, is at the Nancy Hansen, we don't discriminate between whether you're using the racquetball court, whether you're using the racquetball court to play dodgeball. Like, you're taking up the space, this is the cost to take up the space. So we weren't differentiating between any, whatever sport you're using the particular thing for, because ultimately, you're just taking up the space. So when it comes to the potential for developing a dual court pass, which is something that this board can consider, this also checks the box for the people that come in that only do want to play basketball. Now, the resident kids aren't charged. The non-resident children do pay, the under 18. But we have plenty of adults that just come and would buy a straight-up court pass to come play basketball because they don't want to work out. We're, obviously we're not Planet Fitness. We're not, Gold's Gym. They just want to come in and play basketball in air conditioning. So a court pass would work for them just as well as it would work for people that are just coming to play pickleball or randomly volleyball.
And if you look at the difference in the costing for the number of people who come to play basketball, let's say, if you just gave them the court fee, which is what the Nancy Hansen people pay, it's, like you said, it's $0 for children or $1 for non-resident children. Or if it's an adult, it's only $1 difference between what they would pay today. They'd actually get $1 break if they paid a court fee versus the C5 rate. So we're not talking, a huge revenue loss there, because you're going to make it up in all of these insurance pickleball people, basically, is where you're going to make your money up. And I wouldn't change the timing or anything, because you have to allow, you want kids to come play, or people come play basketball or whatever it is, volleyball, whatever you set up the gym for. You want to provide all of that availability, unless it seems like the staff is seeing there are certain times when everything's dead. I don't know.
So for the directive on item 5 specifically, I should have rearranged this so that those two kind of ran together. But for item 5 specifically, we're looking for direction from the board to staff related on the continued acceptance of the insurance programs applicable for the basic membership. And then, and once we get to item 7, I can provide a little background on why it's not just a huge stack of fee schedules for you to consider just yet, because there's a lot of considerations, like you guys have all brought up so far. There's a lot of moving pieces that I wanted this board to give me a little more direction on before I handed you 85 pages of potential fee schedules.
Well, one question I have, Molly, and I know you did this with, I can't remember which insurance company because I don't have the stuff in front of me, but I know you had renegotiated a fee with the latest contract. So I guess if we're going to change that to say that this is going to only be for basic membership, I still would expect that as each contract comes due, we at least do our due diligence and try to increase the fee that the insurance company is paying to us, especially since many of those haven't been changed for so many years.
That is my absolute intention, to get the most possible bang for the buck out of the insurance companies.
So item 5 is asking to continue to accept insurance for basic membership, but then item 7 is defining basic membership.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And touching on some of the other things that were brought up about dual passes and et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
So it would seem that we would do a recommendation on accepting the current insurance program and wait till we get to number 7 to detail what that is. Okay.
I would make a motion that we continue to accept current insurance programs for basic membership.
Is there a second?
I second.
Brad Pravell,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mosquera,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
and Betsy Ronk.
Or,
We're now at the action items, and we're to review City Code, Section 2-171M, and if so desired, request City Council consider the appointment of alternate members for the Culture Leisure Services Board. Is that something?
Yeah, I can give a little recap on
Yes.
that. So we're the only board that currently has alternates. It was always an option for all the boards back in 2000, whatever, when they passed the Uniform Procedures and Requirement changes to the city code. In my perspective, having those two alternates has helped us with continuity of business. Fortunately, we haven't had anybody have to depart or have long-term illness or anything like that. Everybody that's departed the board, it was either because they moved or termed out or whatever. So it was nice to have the required boxes checked. The required boxes to be checked, as all of you know, because you've already done it, is to A, be interviewed by this board, and B, be interviewed by council, and then council makes the recommendation. So to have those two boxes checked already, when somebody says, oh, I decided to move, sorry, it was kind of unexpected, it was easy for me and for our clerk's office to say, okay, well, we already have an alternate that is eligible, they've already been interviewed, here's the minutes, here's the approval, here's the recommendation from the board, and now it's up to council. And there was no argument, there was no debate, it was just smooth sailing. And that was how we were able to fill seats immediately instead of going through meetings where there was a vacant seat. We have a couple people that are currently on the board, and I don't have the roster in front of me, but I know Joel's term is up. And I think we'll have another person with a term coming up, either not this year, but next year. And we do have a meeting in October. So September 30th basically is when a given term ends. So if we can have alternates put back, we can be prepared to not miss a beat when it comes to filling that seat. So when Ginny was appointed to fill Ms. Trulock's position, it was determined by this board to hold off for a little bit because we still had one alternate still in the wings. And at the November 21st meeting, it was voted on to consider new alternates once all alternates have been appointed. And here we are. So we actively promote board membership, and specifically our department definitely promotes board membership for our board. But we currently do have one person that's already checked both of those boxes. Well, at least one of the boxes. She's interviewed with this board, but she would need to be interviewed by council. We did not reach out to her yet to see if she was still available or still interested, because we wanted to know from this board if you guys wanted to consider alternates again. But we do have one active application, and she is still eligible should she choose to or be available to participate. And then we would start with her and go from there to either get more alternates or not. It's up to this board. So there's basically 3 options that you guys can, 3 different actions that you can take regarding the topic of board alternates. You can decline to utilize or appoint any more board alternates for this board. You can direct staff to reach out to the previously interviewed candidate, Ms. Mary Stant, to confirm availability to serve and proceed with a recommendation to council. Or you can wait for additional applicants before moving forward with any alternate recommendations or appointments. And bless you. And that last one would be if you chose to still seek to have alternates for this board.
Do we have to do anything or recommend to have James seated in the open spot, or has that already been passed along to council?
That was completed at the last council meeting.
Okay. So that's not on our plate. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so currently the only quote-unquote vacancies are those empty alternate seats if we want to consider having alternates back. But we do have some members terming out soon, so it would be to our advantage to at least be prepared for that, so we don't have an empty seat at a meeting.
I would say, as the most recent alternate myself, that it was it was helpful for me to sit in on meetings and become familiar with a lot of the issues that you're talking about before I came up and sat up here. And I would recommend that you do have alternates in place, because you just never know when they might be needed. And whether you proceed with the one that you've already interviewed, which makes sense to me. But if you want to open that up to see if other people might want to apply and have others I think when I first started off, I was a 3rd alternate, which, I was pleased with that, so you very quickly needed other people, because I became the 2nd and the 1st and now on the board. So I think it's good to have alternates in the wings, and if they can be at these meetings and be familiar with it, it's going to be a smoother transition.
Concur.
I was going to say, I recall someone being concerned about, this was at one of the meetings where we had discussed this alternate situation. Can't remember what date it was, but they had talked about it being made known to other people in the community again, so that those people could turn in applications if they had an interest in it, versus just taking from the pool that already existed. So I don't know. I looked at that section again, that regarding this procedure, and I didn't see how that was addressed specifically in there. Like, do we make a solicitation for additional membership? I don't think that was in there. But at any rate, I think that was what somebody had expressed a concern about months ago when we were talking about getting the alternates. Did we have, I didn't look at the Blinky board out front to see whether applications were being taken or whether that was advertised. I haven't looked specifically for that, so.
We are promoting board membership on the marquee, and
Okay.
it's also
The
been,
Blinky board.
the Blinky one.
The marquee, excuse me. Mhm.
And we've also included an advertisement for it in our most recent Parks and Recreation Activity Guide. And that message is also being shared in a rotation with our social media, because even if this board would like us to contact Mary, and if she's available, we would still have one more vacancy right off the bat. And the code is silent on the process beyond interview for the board, interview by the board that you're seeking appointment to, interview by the council for their ultimate decision, and then there's the appointment. But at this point, at the time that that conversation was had, going all the way back to the May 30th,
Almost a year.
yeah, anniversary, to the May 30th meeting, we had, I think, almost 9 applicants. And we are down to, there was a couple that were interviewed that have actually already been appointed to other boards. And so the only one that's not in process of being appointed to another board that checked the CLS box is Mrs. Stant. So our bench is still kind of not as deep as it needs to be. So we would still try to be advocating for,
Okay.
or encouraging more people to apply and get involved.
Molly, do you know if other boards are in need of members? Are they advertised? I mean, is there like an advertisement that's put out saying, you know, these 3 boards need people, or is it upon the person wanting to volunteer to search that out?
The most recent advertisement listed all of our boards because things change so rapidly. And with the passing of the term limits shortly after I started or shortly before I started, the rotation is a little faster than it used to be. And we also have a lot more people that are engaged. Whereas that was, I mean, once upon a time, it was pulling teeth, and there were people that were reappointed because there wasn't anybody else waiting in the wings or even anybody applying. So we're starting to get a lot more engagement on that level, and we're starting to get a lot more people with diverse backgrounds and diverse interests. And the boards that have historically had the most problems with keeping people I literally went through the whole, the city clerk's office maintains a file of active applicants once you apply for a board. Even if you're not directly appointed to the one you interviewed with, your application stays on file for 3 years. So as I started writing this agenda item, I'm like, oh, we've got a bunch of people in this folder. I said, let me call Renee downstairs because she literally has every other board that's not you. And we went through the list, and everybody that had not currently been appointed was in process of being appointed. And that's when I realized we needed to deepen our
So it
bench.
sounds like it should be something that we're constantly putting out,
Yeah.
public relations to get people to be interested in it. Because as you say, sometimes people just leave, and rather than just starting the whole process then, which could take several months,
Right.
as has happened before here, it's much better to always have that pool of candidates, even if it's for more than one type of, advisory board.
Right. And there's also a limit, because the other question I had to ask of Renee is when someone sits on a quasi judicial board, they're not allowed to sit on any other board. For a little while, we had Ms. Trulock. She sat on our board and the Community Appearance Board. And while that was not strictly prohibited, because neither one are quasi judicial, we were going to eventually run into a problem because there are things that this board does and projects that this department has that eventually have to go before community appearance. So she would have to recuse herself at either one, the other, or both. I'm not sure how that looked, but luckily we didn't run into that while she was still seated. So, as grateful as we were to have her participate in as much as possible, I totally, as somebody that once served on an advisory board for a very long time, it is a lot of work, and I couldn't imagine doing two. So.
Well, I think it's helpful that we're only at this point looking for 2 alternate members. We're not under the gun to fill multiple regular members, which we have had been in the past. So if we start looking now or start getting applications now, I guess I would probably recommend, because it's summer and so many people maybe aren't totally engaged with what's going on because they're busy traveling or with their kids or whatever they're doing. Maybe wait and collect these and then interview people, not at the next meeting, but at the September meeting, giving people more time to possibly see our advertising that we're looking for members. And hopefully people, sometimes it takes school to start before people start to pay attention to what's going on.
So can we, is there anyone who would like to make a recommendation that we request the city council to consider the appointment of alternate members for our Culture and Leisure Services Board?
I think we should go ahead and try to promote the person that is in process already and request that they do promote that person to the alternate position. And then we can still continue to advertise and try to get more people to fill in the ranks as well. But I think we should go ahead and move forward with the person that you have in mind already. And
That's if she's available. Molly, you said no one's reached out to her yet to see if she's still interested, correct? Unless I did not hear that right.
So
Can we put both those points in one recommendation?
So the motion would probably be best served to go with something along the lines of the second bullet point, is direct staff to reach out to the previously interviewed candidate to confirm availability to serve, and then proceed with the recommendation to council, and then pair that with,
And at the same time, consider the appointment of alternate members, more alternate
and
members.
pursue more applications, yeah.
Do we have a second?
I would second that recommendation from Mr. Stobie.
Could you read that? I'm not sure if I caught the whole thing. Could you read back what that is, resolutions, how that is worded?
So what my takeaway was, direct staff to reach out to the previously interviewed candidate to confirm availability to serve, and depending upon her response, proceed with a recommendation to council while we advocate or promote for additional applicants to fill the alternate seats, or at least her seat if she's not able to.
At the same time.
Yeah. So,
Brad Pavel,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mosquera,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
Betsy Rock.
Or,
I have a clarifying question. So, alternates, when I roll off at the end of this year, if you have multiple applications, how does that chair get filled? Is it just the first alternate fills into that chair, and then the second alternate becomes the first alternate, or?
that's what we've done so far.
Okay,
Yeah, we set the precedent.
got it. Just clarifying. That's what I thought, but want to make sure that was the case.
Okay, moving on to action item number 7. Here we are back at the providing staff with direction on specific fee schedule and membership amendments that we were just talking about.
So just a little background on this, so you know where I was coming from in the process. I have my perpetually ongoing fee schedule recommendation spreadsheets. And as I started going through our minutes and looking at some of the things that were discussed in the workshop, I ended up having a lot of questions. And those questions, I apologize if any of the bullet points I came up with were a little confusing. I tend to write how I speak. So like as these like, questions I had were coming up. It was like, well, and I'll use number 1 as an example. If we adjust the amenities included in the basic membership package to exclude the use of the courts, the first thing that came up is, well, what, if that's a basic membership, should I have a premium that includes that? What if I don't care about the Nancy Hansen? What if I'm not a Nancy Hansen type of person and I really just wanted access to the courts and access to the gymnasium? So that was a question that came up. The next question was, okay, so I don't use insurance benefits, and so should the regular rate of the basic membership be reduced for that? Because they would still need to pay for court access, but if you already have a quote-unquote basic membership and now I'm removing the court, are you going to want to spend as much as you did when you had prior access? Another question that I had, because I always try to put myself in the shoes of the people that are using the facilities and the board for that matter. Back to, for those not utilizing insurance benefits, should we offer a premium membership package that includes, court access? And then the last bullet in each of those is everything that's involved. Now, rolling out RecDesk changes. RecDesk is not my favorite software program. I'm not sure that I could ever find a favorite software program because there's so many out there and there's a lot of variables and they're all front-end load. So garbage in, garbage out. I haven't completely written RecDesk off because at this point I really don't want to go through another software change. We just did a website. I'm still a little shell-shocked from that one. But anything that we do in RecDesk, and when I started putting myself in the staff situations, and I don't know how many of you worked in service industry or used a POS system, but the more I started playing with, suggested fee schedules and all that other stuff, I just saw the buttons on the screen just start multiplying. And when the buttons on the screen start multiplying for us, the margin for error will increase. And when that transfers on the other side, and I have one perfect example of this, there is a person over at the Nancy Hansen that has an annual shuffleboard membership. Now, he paid the exact same as somebody with an annual tennis court membership or anything else, and I'm betting he doesn't use the shuffleboard court annually. I bet it was he hit the button and now we have that metric in our system. So there's margin for error when you really diversify stuff like that on both ends, not just for the staff, because the staff we can train and learning curve, but you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, you know what, I'm really going to get my life together. I'm going to get an annual shuffleboard membership. You might hit the wrong button. You might end up with pickleball instead of shuffleboard. So the more I got into it, the more I didn't want to just present you guys with arbitrary numbers for all of these different options. I wanted a little bit more direction from you guys on what I should focus on when it comes to these 3 different areas, because one impacts another. When we get into number 2 with the dual court pass, that was the other one where my eyes started to cross, because I'm like, okay, so this is a dual court pass, so you pay a little bit less at the Nancy Hansen, you currently pay a little bit more at the C5. Do I split the difference? Do I bump everything up to the C5 level? How should I best navigate that situation? The membership type would best serve those who either only utilize the courts at these facilities or who utilize insurance benefits at the community center in addition to the courts. So I was also trying to look at the audiences, the people that would be most affected by it. And then the last conundrum I had was establishing promotional prices to make annual passes attractive for guests. Would this be seasonal? Would this be only open once or twice a year with specified registration windows? Would this apply to all membership types and rates? Because when I started looking at especially the dual court and the promotional pricing, we were really focusing on memberships, not the daily drop-in rate. So that would be a separate conversation to talk about daily drop-in rates, because those people are paying as they go. They don't know how many times they're going to come. They don't know how long they're staying in town. They're just there to do whatever for one day. So we would still continue to have a daily drop-in rate for our court fees and for our gym side of it. So the changes that this board would recommend would really be focused on those monthly and annual membership or seasonal membership fees. So, yeah, I had more questions than, and so that's why I didn't just hand you a stack of, here's some ideas that we had, because there was a lot of things that I wanted your feedback on so that I knew where to focus my attention, because otherwise I would still be working on these spreadsheets right now, and I would be nowhere near done.
There is so much going on in these three groupings,
There is.
and I haven't been staring at it like you have for ages, but it's like, there's too much. Is there any way where we could do something, focus on, say, the main thing was, we started out looking at that basic membership package because of the insurance providers. Is the dual court pass need to be hooked on to that basic membership? So we have to look at it this year, or can we focus on one thing? Because it seems like all these different variables that you bring up sounds like it would be an absolute terror for anyone at the front desk or handling it, because all those variables are going to be coming there to the, will be coming with people as they come in. Is there any way to take some of this and do it at a later date, or does it have to be all together because they're all connected?
I don't see it as
Well,
needed.
that was why I kind of had started with the prior conversation is let's find a way to make this as simple as possible for staff and as reasonable for the participant. And I just pulled out how many C5 annual and monthly memberships we have had in the past year. And being that that's a fairly low number, I would even say it would be worthwhile to advertise this special that if you buy a monthly or annual membership at the C5, it includes a court pass. If you come with insurance or a daily rate, then you have to pay for the C5 basic and a court pass. And just keep the court pass the same, whether they're in either facility. Just make it simple. And that way, you know, you're not really losing anything by giving this benefit to the monthly and annual people, because there aren't that many of them. And so you may even get more people to say, oh, well, maybe I should just buy a monthly instead of paying the daily. Well, that's okay. You know, you're trying to keep this simple for the staff, but in the end, we're going to make the money off of the insurance people.
That's- Excuse me. The rec desk system, does that communicate back and forth with Nancy Hansen and C5? Do they talk to each other?
Oh, yes, it's the same platform.
Oh, yeah.
Which
Okay.
makes it kind of And I've slowly been trying to clean it up because, like I said, it was front-end load, and the person that was front-end loading it, I'll be dead honest, didn't do a real good job at front-end loading it. So when you're at either facility, staff is trained to bring up on the screen that basic facility. When I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking at the whole program, the list is like this. So staff has learned, the people that come in to, typically you don't have, say, a Friday Fest person coming in. We do online payments now, thank God we're in 2025. But prior to that, you wouldn't have somebody coming in to the community center to pay for Friday Fest. So that kind of helps things a little bit. We've got everyone kind of corralled, but everybody operates out of the same system. They could very well take your payment for Friday Fest at the community center if they wanted to. But for the most part, they're working off of a screen that is limited to the activities that are specifically at that facility. So, one big system.
I really like Betsy's suggestion about keeping it simple. One, we should probably grandfather the people that are already in this program, grandfather them in so we don't get them upset. Then we use Betsy's suggestion of having a new program that has court fees and make it simple. Nancy Hansen is X, C5 is the same. And just, I don't know how you can do that with your profit and loss statements, but keep it the same, and then people go from Nancy to C5 and back and forth. The third prong needs to be a membership drive. The more members we get, that's where we're going to get the more revenue from. And I believe, I read the recap, maybe we have the membership drive just twice a year and advertise the heck out of that. Not all year, but October, November, September, October, and then April and May, or whatever those magic dates are. And we just advertise and advertise. Hey, from a you get a $32 a month membership, bring a guest, and they're free for a year. Got to sign up for a year. And then it reverts without the free person after a year, whatever the magic thing is. But I like Betsy's idea, keep it simple, keep the rec desk things simple so they communicate, so Nancy isn't $3, C5 isn't $5. Right now, I think we have to keep it simple. And we have to separate. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, no, I was just remembering, Molly, you had brought up something at the workshop that would help possibly maybe thinking about the personnel running the rec desk software, is that you could have, if you were going to have this court pass, maybe the participant would have to have two little keychain things, whatever you call those, scanning things, one green and one, blue or something. One is court and one is the gym or the basic membership, so that if you came and you said, I want to do both today, then you just scan them both. If you want to just play one, you just scan that, or you can purchase whatever you want. And what I foresee happening is a lot of the insurance people will actually buy a monthly court pass, Nancy Hansen court pass. And because they'll be like, well, I'm here for the whole month, or I'm here for 3 months or something like that. So I'll just buy a month pass and, and make it simple. And you might even then, cut back on as many having to pay a daily drop-in fee for, a court pass on a insurance thing and making it all complicated for staff.
Yeah, because the other dynamic that adds to this is the level of differential pricing that we have. Senior resident, resident, non-resident, a military with first responder, non-resident child, and that level of differential pricing has been in existence with the city for 40-plus years. I've had to have, we'll call them conversations with people that live on the south side of Grant Avenue about why they are in unincorporated Brevard County. And the one lady I spoke with was very offended that I told her she was unincorporated. And then I had to explain the history of incorporation, and I encouraged her to speak with her county representative about, incorporating and her neighbors, because they're going to have to vote on that too. And they've voted multiple times in the last 60 years to not do that. And once I explained that to her, she understood. But when you start complicating this part of it, it gets bigger, because now it's not just a basic membership for a resident, it's a basic membership for all 5 of those categories. So that's when my eyes crossed and I'm like, no, I'm rewriting this agenda item and I'm getting more direction before I start doing this. But
Well, it would be a basic membership for those who pay daily in all categories. I mean, we wouldn't change the fee schedule at all. We would really just change the description.
and that's what this board can vote on?
Pardon, I didn't.
That's part of the thing that this board can either vote on right now, because we talked earlier about keeping item 3 or 4, whichever one it was, to basically accept the insurance prices for a basic membership. So one thing that this board could take action on tonight is saying, okay, this is starting January 1 or October 1, whichever is more convenient for the board, or whatever makes more sense to you, is that a basic membership now only includes this. And then from that point on, the insurance folks, they have to re-register every year, because the insurance companies change their mind every year on what they're going to support and what they're not going to support, and people have to make elections every year when you reach a certain age on whether you're going to have Plan A through Z or all of that other stuff, and all of the offerings through Plan A and Z tend to change, from what I understand. I haven't reached that point yet, but hopefully it's still around when I get there. So amending the basic membership to just that and providing an effective start date would be step 1. And then giving me the direction to present some fee schedules related to court passes, that can be the next motion. And the last one would be to come up with a promotional plan that would make at least the annual, if not the monthly and the annual, more attractive to people to utilize the entire facility.
The drive membership. Molly, repeat the 3 options.
Or the three areas?
Successive motions.
The three areas?
In 3 areas.
Okay, so the first area would be to adjust the basic membership to only, basic membership at the C5 to only include the the workout room upstairs and exclude court access.
Okay, stay there. Please go over the negatives of that you found.
So the negatives of that would be, for those people that are currently utilizing the entire building for a certain rate, now you are removing that one room from their list of things that they can do. So would you want to pay the same rate? If you're not the insurance guy, would you want to pay the same rate for less amenities?
Well, being that we don't know how many people that aren't on insurance are checking in on a daily rate. That makes it a little difficult to know that. But I guess to make it simple, at this point in time, we haven't raised our rates for the C5 in 2 years. The fee schedule went into effect October 1st of 23. So I think if the verbiage or the advertising went out to say that something to the effect that we haven't raised our rates in 2 years, so instead of raising our rates this year, we're just going to limit our daily paying people to use of the upstairs, should we call it. And for you monthly and annual people, you'll get the use of the whole building. Let's just pretend, really try to make it look positive. And then just, like I said, just change now the Nancy Hansen fee schedule went in January of 23. Kind of the same thing. You haven't changed that in 2 years. We don't propose to change it in 2 years, but it will now change its description to not be a Nancy Hansen fee schedule. It'll just be a court fee schedule for both facilities.
Only
And,
one minor
period.
point of clarification. When it comes to memberships, no one has a daily drop-in membership. So memberships would only apply in that train of thought to monthly and annual. The daily rate would still be the daily rate to use the building.
Right, but it would be a daily rate only to be used in the basic functionality of the upstairs. Let's put it that way, then, not if you don't want to call it a basic membership, but we're changing the daily rate to only include the upstairs, because you're always also going to have to put out there through the insurance people that the upstairs is now what's considered the basic gym feature. So that you could kind of combine all of that into one promotional item that's going out to the community. And I think that what I could foresee happening is anybody who pays daily, if they're not on insurance, they may say, well, today there's nothing there that I don't want to go play basketball. There's nothing going on today that I want to play at the court. So I'll just pay the regular daily rate and I'll just go up and lift today. Tomorrow, I want to play basketball. I'll just pay the daily court rate. And they'll probably will go back and forth based upon whatever their workout schedule is or their time of day or whatever works for them. And that's okay.
Hey, Molly, can we take a short break for restroom purposes? Can we
Okay.
take a break? Mary?
We have a request to take a short break.
Just provide a time for the end of the
The
recess.
time, right now it's 7:20, if we're back at
7:25?
7:30
Oh, yeah,
or
I'm
7:25.
quick.
Okay.
Okay,
I love recess. My favorite subject. Wow. So much to
Oh,
consider.
sorry.
I know.
So
Yep.
lately, the attendance at pickleball has dropped off. And
Because the snowbirds have gone.
number one reason was snowbirds leaving. Number two,
fix these things this summer. So we'll have a nice, a fair.
So,
Meeting's back to order.
I'll pick your.
I think we were continuing to talk about any recommendations that we could offer to help provide direction to staff.
Madam Director, you mentioned the question was if player or person A paid this amount and for this facility and person B paid a less amount for the facility, would that create a problem between the individuals? Is that correct? Did I understand that?
The challenge on our end is keeping all of it straight. So when I present a fee schedule or a couple different variations of fee schedules for you guys to review, it includes differential pricing for every category that the city's been using. So that's age and residency for the most part. So that the seniors have always, historically speaking, council and this board has always focused on making things affordable to seniors. And council and this board have always focused on making things more equitable for residents that are already paying taxes and or even renting, because you're still contributing to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two big considerations. So say hypothetical situation, you have me amend the basic membership, and that membership, if you wanted to just take like Mrs. Ronk's recommendation and make no changes to the actual fee schedule when it comes to the basic membership, just change the rule on what that includes, nothing would, that differential fee schedule wouldn't really apply unless we started talking about the fee schedule you would need to look at would be like the monthly court passes. And then we would have to come up with a, potentially, depending upon what this board wants to see, just a court pass daily drop-in rate. So.
But wouldn't you just leave your differential schedule that you have in place? You would just leave it in place. Don't change it. So obviously, the daily rate, which would only give you access to the upstairs, should we say, would still be the differential rate that's daily today.
Correct.
Wouldn't it?
The challenge.
Yeah, and the same with the court pass thing. It would be the differential rate that's been ongoing for the last 2 years. It would just now also give you the flexibility to use the court at the C5. So from a rec desk software perspective, you're not changing anything other than the way that the staff needs to understand how it's being used. It comes out more in just your communication to the public.
So we're not changing the prices, we're just changing the rules.
Exactly. So, because you'll have enough to deal with trying to put this trying to put this into place in the C5? You know, how are you going to manage this with your staff to say, okay, I know you paid to go to the court, but you can't go upstairs, and you people can go upstairs, but you can't go over there. And, you know, that was our concern from the get-go when we started the C5, hence the reason we just left the whole thing open. But you made it appear that at the workshop that would be manageable now with the staffing that you have, and you could figure out some way to you know, appropriately direct traffic one way or another and keep track of who's going where with whatever it be by wristbands or however you want to make it happen.
So then the motion, the first thing to address would be to change the rules of the basic membership.
Yep, and then I would make that motion that we change the basic membership to only include upstairs at the C5, and we will develop a court pass as a premium or an add-on as we move forward. But we're going to redefine what the basic membership is, that it's only to the C5, it's only for going upstairs to work out.
Now, a question, because Molly, you said that you don't call it a membership when it's a daily rate. And so I guess, you know, are we going to say this will apply to people who buy a monthly or annual membership as well? We give them a break, and so really it's only applying to anyone who's paying the daily rate and anyone who's covered by insurance.
Isn't it, is it better to say it this way, that the daily membership or the silver sneakers or the insurance membership excludes
The court.
the
Yes,
court?
The courts.
In other words, to make it exclude something versus just tell it what they can do. But I think that's the whole purpose of it, is you want to be able to charge for things that Nancy Hansen is able to charge for. You know.
Correct.
Correct.
Because
So-
you can't
so-
use your silver sneakers.
Right,
at
so
Nancy
instead of
Hansen.
saying it includes this, let's say it excludes the court membership, and then you can establish the rules at a later date for the court memberships.
And I would even say that you'd want to shoot to October 1st with the new fiscal year. And so you can advertise toward that end to say, hey, as of October 1, the basic membership excludes all courts. And that is what you get with your insurance, so that people know, like, well, I don't know what I have.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you have with your insurance. So you're not going to have access to the courts anymore. And by October 1st, you'll have the court pass that people can add on either for a day. Well, it'll be normal, just like Ms. Ronk is saying. The daily will stay the same, except they'll understand that, no, that excludes upstairs, because all you're doing is you're buying the court pass. I don't know how, currently, do you do a daily pass for a workout?
It's for the
It's
entire
for the
building.
whole facility.
Okay, so that will have to change.
It would
You'll
say,
have to
it
come
would
up.
exclude any of those could be amended so that it excluded court use.
Got it, okay.
So it would be
Yep,
simple
that's-
that way.
That's a good idea.
It's a KISS, keep it simple.
And I think if you shoot for October 1st, it does a couple things. It lines you up with your fiscal year for future fee schedule changes. It also happens before many of your people that are here for a temporary time. It goes into effect before that, so that they know what they're getting right when they get here. And we're not trying to start that in January when some people have already been here for a month or two after Thanksgiving. So if you shoot for that October 1st timeframe, it gives everybody a good baseline, and then you can do that going forward. So the motion would be, like Ms. Scott said, to change the membership verbiage to say excluding courts for the day drop-in for the memberships, and then we'll come up with something new or by October 1st.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because, and then, you know, people who come in and they use the Zumba and they pay for the Zumba class, it doesn't throw any issues into those particular areas either, because yeah, okay.
And then, and not to, because you do have a motion on the floor, just to,
Which can be amended, so go ahead.
this gives me a huge amount of direction, because at this point, with the basic membership issue, the directive that you've provided, at least through this motion, I can come up with a couple different variations for that court pass program.
Right.
And I'm not coming up with 30 different variations for every single one of these. So that like reduces the complexity of it, because once we adjust that basic membership of what the C5 does, we can actually examine in a little more depth how we want to structure court usage. So once basic membership's off the table as far as complexity of the fee schedule, then we can look at the actual court usage and how we want to either balance that between the two facilities, or how you want to work that.
So is the pending motion then that the membership at the C5 excludes court privileges? And
Yes.
we will address court privileges at a later date.
Are we saying it
That's it.
excludes it for daily drop-ins and insurance participants
Yes.
Everything.
only? It excludes the use of the upstairs for dailies and insurance participants.
No, we're
Just
saying
it
that all,
excludes the-
Downstairs.
all memberships and daily drop-ins, as they currently are written in our fee schedule, will exclude court membership.
privileges.
Court privileges.
Right.
Yes.
So that's for monthly, annually, and then we can do a big push in September with rolling out the new court fees, and that can be part of the promotional aspect of it, and it'll give people some heads up, and then we can also figure out, for those people that just bought one in May, do we grandfather them in? Do we say, hey, you're gonna keep, I know what you bought, and we don't want to take, more than half the year's, so, but that can be a later date. We can work that out. I think tonight, we want to say, we make a motion to change our memberships and our daily drop-ins, to exclude court memberships starting October 1.
October 1st. I'm going to second that. If that motion was made, I'm seconding it.
Okay.
Brad Pravell,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mascara,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
Betsy Rock.
Or
Okay, so with that part handled, we can start working on that. In terms of the poor person that just bought an annual membership yesterday, whoever that may be, the way I would envision that going forward is whatever was done prior to us rolling out the announcement for this, whether it be October 1 or whatever, that we honor whatever package they signed up for. If they signed up for a
For
monthly
the
package,
duration of it.
then when it came time to renew, because we don't do auto renewals, they would have to come in. So if you signed up September 20th, when October 20th came around, your month is up and you will now be paying whatever.
And if that gets out and it causes 100 people to go and get annual memberships this summer, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next bit of direction, and I think we've kind of talked through it a little bit, but, and this could be a motion or a consensus, because with the court pass option, there's a lot of other variables we can consider. And that is, how to make it equitable to account for air conditioning and what I would consider priority seating, because you only have 3 courts over at the community center and it's air conditioned, I would be very competitive over trying to get the air conditioned in the, you know, the least amount of space. But that's just because I can't handle the heat. So there's a lot of different options that I could throw out for the board to consider that you guys can mix and match on, that you can look at different angles. And so I would be looking for direction to come up with a couple different options for the Court Pass program that would be either dual, accepted at both facilities, or not accepted, well, accepted at one or the other. So I could come up with different options on that the board can sort through.
Would that, I think I need a little bit of a refresher on, like, if they have a tournament, does that include?
Programs are
You know,
separate.
It would be,
Programs are separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, so if there's a tournament, there would be a fee associated or attached to
Right,
that would
yeah.
not be affected by this?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
this is just for
Okay.
general use. If you're participating in a organized league,
Okay.
you have to pay a separate fee. If a tournament usually includes some bells and whistles like swag and t-shirts and
Just
stuff
want
like
to,
that.
just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
so so we should make a motion then to have you go ahead and develop some
Options.
options for the court usage at both facilities.
Yep.
Whether it's dual or single.
Excuse me.
I think the only thing we have to consider, if we want to try to keep it simple, is try to use the current fee schedule that there is at Nancy Hansen and just make it, acceptable at both places. The only problem that I foresee in that would be in the annual fee. I don't know if many people buy an annual Nancy Hansen fee, but I think that if you took the annual Nancy Hansen fee and you added it to the annual C5 fee, you're never going to sell it to anybody. Because right now, for, let's say, a non-resident senior at the C5, they'd pay $528 for an annual and $352 for a court pass. Well, now you're at, almost $900.
Yeah, I wasn't considering combining them. As in adding them together, I was going to come up with a separate fee schedule that would just either incorporate one or the other, depending upon what this board wants to look at, or combined for just straight up use of the courts. But yeah, I wouldn't want to charge somebody $900 for the use of, just to have the flexibility to go between the two facilities.
Well, and that's why I thought it would be a better way to promote an annual membership for people by saying that if you paid the current pricing for annual membership at the C5, we throw in.
But I think that's what you're supposed to
the
do, is
court.
you're supposed to prepare options for
Yes.
us to consider. We're not going to
We
consider
don't
them
have
tonight.
to consider them tonight.
All right, we're just going to, that was the motion.
Well, I think we have to think about it, because the next time we meet is July, and we have to have it then to the council immediately if you're going to put it in place October 1st.
And we
Well,
can
I think
accommodate
that's what
that.
we're asking Molly to do, is to put things together so that there'll be a much more succinct package for us to vote on the next time.
And then it would go before council theoretically at the August meeting if you guys have a recommendation.
Director and Deputy Director, I think we should ask James here, what's going on in the pickleball market and what's going on with courts in our surrounding communities. I think you need this data to help you put your program together.
I'll try to keep it very brief. What I was just talking about a minute ago over here was that the attendance at pickleball has been dropping off, mostly because the snowbirds left and because it's getting hot, but a lot of condos have put in pickleball courts. And even when the snowbirds, especially when the snowbirds were here and it was crowded, there would be many times when there would be groups of people who wouldn't show up that normally would be at Nancy Hansen because they were playing at Shorewood or Conquistador or another one of these places that have, and it's free to play. If you're invited by somebody who lives there, and they might invite a dozen people to go play at their places. Plus, Kiwanis put in courts that are brand new courts and they're free because they haven't figured out a way to charge yet. And there's new indoor courts that are going in down at Satellite Beach. It'll be a little while, but it's going to be a very high-end, air-conditioned kind of a place down there. So there's where a few years ago, Nancy Hansen was the only place to play unless you wanted to drive quite a distance to another town. Now there's a lot of options really close by. And so what I've noticed people doing is to avoid paying the fee, they look for these other free places to play. And even at Nancy Hansen, there's a whole group of young people who are starting to play now, which didn't happen a few years ago. And they're working during the day, and they've discovered that if they come after 6 o'clock when the desk is closed, they play for free. And of course, they, also, so when the courts used to only be used from 8 in the morning till noon, and then it got too hot, now at about 6 o'clock, the whole courts are full almost every night, and they're playing for free. So they're doing that intentionally to avoid fees. So my concern is that anytime you add a fee to this, you're going to lose people because they're going to find other places to go and to do that. So I don't know what the answer is with the court fees at C5 and stuff like that. You might gain revenue by that, but you also might lose revenue if people see that and stop playing there because they don't want to pay the extra fees. That's my personal concern, just from what I'm seeing with all these other options being available now. That's all.
And one thing to add to that, though, we are building or resurfacing or refinishing, whatever that term is, the courts this summer. So even if we upcharge a tad, at least they see that we have done capital improvements to the courts. But we have to recognize that there's more competition out there for court time.
Yes, there has been growing competition, especially in the private spaces. Random side note, my hometown just took out part of their city plaza directly in front of City Hall and installed 3 beautiful pickleball courts that are free to play on.
Yeah.
And they have festoon lighting, and when I was growing up, you wouldn't be caught dead walking in that neighborhood. So it was nice to see that level of improvement, but that is the type of investment that condos, because they have shuffleboard courts that no one's using too. Yeah. So the competition factor has dramatically changed, that dynamic has changed, and that needs to be a consideration when we start looking at what we're charging, how we're charging. And the topic of, and this is just some historical perspective for some of the newer members of the board, the topic of having access to the courts outside of business hours has been about as oscillating as public parking or paid parking. So that is also a recommendation that could come from this board. That wouldn't necessarily need to rise to the level of council because that's a day-to-day operation thing. But if this board would like to consider options such as locking the courts when we close, you have every right to do so.
Well, they used to be locked, I know, right, Molly?
No, ma'am. The only things that we would lock were the racquetball courts, and that was during Friday Fest. And then when the racquetball courts became an attractive nuisance for vagrancy and all the things that come with that, we did start locking those in the evenings. But the courts themselves are tennis and pickleball courts are left unlocked on weekends and evenings.
Well, I think what had been happening, maybe what I was remembering then, was that the pickleball nets were all not there outside of business hours. They were taken, so you could play tennis because obviously those courts are permanent, but the pickleball courts were taken up and then they were put out each morning. Whereas now they're being left out.
Yeah, the pickleball nets
I don't know
that
if
we
there's
have now
more damage
are a
occurring
lot.
or not, I don't know.
Well, the pickleball nets that we have now are actually professional ones and not the kind that you would assemble in your backyard. What we had before literally took about 15 minutes to assemble. There was about 35 pieces to each one. And those literally could not be left out overnight, even not in this environment. The ones that we have now are a lot more substantial.
I believe there's a motion out, though, before James. Can we discuss that motion? And then I have a concept for the after 6 p.m. pickleball tennis court.
So the motion on the floor?
What was the,
The gal at the end had it.
oh, Ginny. Ginny, did you have,
Yeah, I forgot what it was now. No, I'm just kidding.
talking about
It was,
the
it was,
Exclude.
yeah, it was for Molly, it's
Direction.
for her to be able to go forward to create different options for the court usage and court fees.
I second the motion.
Dual or singular, whatever it is.
dual membership?
Not membership, it's the fee schedule for the
dual.
court, yeah.
Dual use.
Brad Purvell,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mosquera,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
Betsy Ronk.
Or
And then with number 3 on this particular item, I think I've got some pretty clear feedback from you regarding membership drives and promotional pricing. So we'll come up with a plan for that that doesn't overcomplicate the situation, doesn't require a bunch of extra buttons, and would target attractive times not only for our seasonal residents, but as I like to call them, the resolutionists. So,
You want another recommendation on the promotions then, or is that kind of
I
a
think
given with, you've got enough?
I think I've got enough feedback to give you guys some good options to at least look at or just to reach consensus on.
Okay.
I think the last item, which wasn't part of this agenda, but you could have, at this point, you could make a motion or reach consensus to have me bring back a proposal, and this pertains to what Mr. Purvell's alluding at, is to consider changes to court accessibility after staffed hours.
Could I just mention, right now, there are leagues that start at 6 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And they don't use all the courts, but they use most of them. So when the courts have to be available for those, and then other people could come and play on the empty courts there. But the most popular time to come, I mean, for a lot of the young people, is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when there are no leagues, so they can have all of the courts. And personally, I would hate to see those locked up at that time, because it's extremely popular with them, and they really love to play at that time. And for many of them who work during the day, they can only play after 6 o'clock. So I wouldn't want to see it locked up and say you can't play here anymore, because it's, they're getting great exercise and they're having great, camaraderie and all this. It's a very healthy thing that they're doing. But I'd hate to see it locked up after 6 myself.
Well, I agree. I think it's great we have young people, but I don't know if it's necessarily fair that someone like James has to pay $4 or $16 a month to play at Nancy Hanson. So why don't we ask Mr. Carlisle to get one of those apps for the gate so you pay your $2 or $3 to open up the gate? Like the parking.
That could be an option. Because we've also had, since we implemented, when I first started, the facility was open until 9 PM Monday through Thursday and closed at 8 PM on Friday. The amount of turnover that we had in recreation leaders, I could fill this room, because no one wants to sit there and stare at a wall until 9 o'clock at night. So one of the first changes we made, especially once we opened the C5, now we were stretched incredibly thin. We are now finally fully staffed at the C5 in a safe and productive manner. But we reduced the hours at the Nancy Hanson to close at 6. With the growing popularity of night leagues, I too would like to, and actually Marcy's got some more on deck. She's already, in her mind, she has already passed the point where the construction is over and she's already building out programs for as soon as those courts are open. So I anticipate even greater usage of organized activities, but it also would not be out of line, nor would it be difficult to implement something where there was a paid weekend thing, and even if it was minimal, because you don't have access to bathrooms. And you better bring your own water. So there's options in there. But you can make a motion to have me, or reach a consensus to have me bring that back at a later date.
I make a motion to bring that concept to see how to create a payment option electronically for when the after hours at Nancy Hanson building.
Yeah. I bet Kiwanis would be very interested to hear what we come up with as well.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Is the motion just to explore options for being able to pay after
Yes.
hours? I think it's fine to explore the options, so I would second that.
I'll third it.
Seconded, but she'll third it.
Brad Purvell,
4.
James Stobie,
4.
Mary Mascara,
4.
Joel Fair,
4.
Jenny Scott,
4.
Betsy Rock.
Or
Okay.
I'm looking at the radar. We got something coming, so let's get at, if we can.
We got one last thing.
All right, let's,
Are there any staff reports from you folks for John Mayberry?
Mine will be real quick. If you've ever been over, I know James has and Brad has, but inside the gymnasium area downstairs, it's like echo chamber on steroids. So Molly has purchased acoustic panels to go up against the underside of the walking track, and we're in the process of putting those up now, where we have gotten a few up. You can tell a little bit of difference already in those areas, so looking forward to that. We are moving forward on the concession stand. We're going to start that probably in 2 weeks, and pouring a slab at the splash pad and get that project off the ground, get it going.
Wonderful.
What? I thought it was a plumbing piece that was not working for the splash pad, but now we're pouring concrete. Can you just clarify just?
Nobody on the city staff ever, if they did tell you that, they spoke out of turn.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nothing like that. If you ever walked by, and I think you've talked to me out there when I was in there, you saw how constricted the space was
Correct.
inside. So we're pouring the pad. We had to replace those round oval sand filters that were in there.
Okay.
So now they're going to be outside, so when we have to go in and do maintenance, a person can, because I'm telling you, it's rough on a big man.
Okay.
You have to go sideways, and there's some areas we get pinged when we have to come under inspection by Department of Health because it's so hard to meet all the standards they have to. But that's been the problem, so we're making more room, changing the equipment out that needed to be changed, and we're dealing with multiple vendors, and we're getting everybody's schedules together, and we're almost there. So
Okay. And that's
it.
been the problem since we shut it down?
It's been a problem since it was
Since
constructed.
3 years ago.
But that's the problem that
It just came home to
pushed us
roost.
to close the
Yeah, the
splash pad.
equipment
Okay.
was, there was too much equipment. Everything was shoved in a tiny little box. They added equipment after the building was actually constructed. They added equipment to the plan. And so since everything needed to be upgraded, this is our opportunity to make it actually serviceable.
Okay.
Because a
Yeah.
grown adult, even someone my size,
Yeah.
cannot fit in there to access the stuff so that it's maintained properly and works efficiently.
But it's taking longer than we had expected.
Because
We had to have parts that had to be ordered, and some had to be.
So
put
that's what I
together.
heard, sorry.
Yes.
Parts to be ordered, I didn't hear plumbing.
Yeah.
I put splash pad parts
And
in plumbing together.
To
My
add
fault.
on to what Molly was saying about serviceability, it's going to be safer in there now because we have the 1 UV filter, which is responsible for killing the dangerous germs in there, and we're putting a second one in. So it's going to be safer for the kids. And additionally, what was in there was residential equipment, just barely could be called commercial grade. So we're just fixing what should have been done at the beginning, and all the people that did it are no longer here, so
Okay.
Expected completion date.
can't.
we're not going to put another one
No.
of those out there. We'll be forming the slab next week. That's step one.
Okay.
So-
So when we get asked, because I get asked.
Yep.
Because
Just-
I'm there.
Every day.
And I'm there on Sundays, and I
Give
get,
give
people
my
get
cell
really
phone
angry.
number. That's what I do.
Okay. I
Give my
will.
cell phone number, yeah.
And-
Joel, thank you, okay, because I live across the street, and at our last meeting, the goal was Memorial Day, okay?
thought,
It
too.
was stated Memorial Day, and you don't know the number of people, children, with families that walk there. I see it every day, and we have no consequences that we pushed our date from Memorial Day to, I don't know. But the only people that suffer the consequences is the children of our community. And that's a shame.
That's why it should have been done correct the first time.
You don't know what you don't know. And what concerns me, I see how this project is moving. I'd like to understand what's going to happen with Sandpiper Park. I know there's money in the CIP. I don't know if that's going to get redlined again. I think there was something mentioned that it would take 30 days once all the schmutz is in and you have to build the schmutz in the park. Is that realistic? Are we?
Yes. That
So
is-
we're
that-
looking at November 1st.
Well, once the order is placed, everything is custom made. So I'm not going to give an open date for when shipping is going to happen and installation, but once they get the parts and the equipment down here from Pennsylvania, it can be installed without having to pour slabs, without having to do permitting, without having to have health inspections. There's a lot more moving parts to a splash pad than there is installing a playground. So that's a much faster process. That's a matter of ripping it out, and should the city council approve that CIP, I will be cleared to place the order for the equipment on October 1. And that's when the clock will start.
And when is that magic date that the city council approves the CIP?
When they approve the budget, which is typically somewhere between August and September.
Okay. And I want to mention this, I'm totally against the concession stand. Okay, 100%, I'm against the concession stand. I don't care if it costs $5,000 or the $400,000. I would rather have that money to go into the field, and I want this on the record. We need to upgrade the dugouts. We need to put air conditioning into the press box. We have an opportunity to make that the field of dreams, and no one with the Little League, Space Coast Little League wants a concession stand because they can't get the labor to operate it. Thank you.
One last thing, Molly Thomas, do you have a staff report?
No, just check your weekly update.
Okay, great. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all very much. I just don't